sometimes I felt like I was a little bit of an outsider because of this. And once I started to learn that there is more people like me, I started to feel so much more at home. Do you avoid violent TV shows or movies because they feel too intense and they leave you feeling unsettled? Are you deeply moved by beauty expressed through art, movies, nature, people? Are you easily overwhelmed by sensory stimuli like noisy crowds, harsh sounds, bright lights, or uncomfortable clothing? Do you feel a strong need for downtime, where it's more than just a preference? Especially when you have hectic days. You need to retreat into nature or into a quiet room where you can come to your senses. Do you have a rich and complex inner life, filled with deep thoughts, strong emotions, and powerful internal experiences? Do you struggle with setting strong personal boundaries? And do you feel like you sometimes engage in people-pleasing behavior? Do you feel overwhelmed and procrastinate because you have an inner saboteur who criticizes you and who makes you feel unhappy? Well, in that case, you might be what is called a highly sensitive person. And it took me a long time to discover this about myself, and it truly changed the way I view myself and my outlook on life. So that is why I want to talk to you about this trait in this video, because I think that if you recognize yourself in these traits, it will absolutely change your life to learn about this so you can feel less alone and understand yourself better, okay? Because I felt like I was too intense growing up, okay? I was so easily overstimulated. People thought I would make a big mess of something that was not at all a big mess to them. I was slow in my movements. I felt, chaotic in my mind whenever there was too much stimulation going on. And so that caused me a lot of suffering and shame in my life, and I started to close my sensitivity off to the world because I felt like each time I would express it somehow, people didn't really understand it, and I felt rejected. I truly felt rejected because of my sensitivity. And so I embarked on a journey to kind of discover what was wrong with me. Okay, I had these strong inner critics that were telling me that there was something wrong with me, and people didn't resonate with me, even though I was very social, very extroverted, okay? I still felt like somehow I couldn't fully relate to people, and my inner experiences were so rich and deep that it sometimes even scared people, okay? Once I started to talk about it, they were like, wow, you feel things so deeply, and I've never thought about this. Sometimes I felt like I was a little bit of an outsider because of this. And until I discovered that it's a trait that many people adopted as some form of survival strategy, okay? HSP, highly sensitive people, they adopt the sensitivity as a survival strategy. And once I started to learn that there is more people like me, I started to feel so much more at home within the world, and I would love to provide you with the same experience. And if you can discover that you are in fact an HSP person and you can start to do your own research, that might lead you to feel a lot less alone, and you might be able to connect with other HSP people, because probably if you are an HSP watching this video, chances are that your best friends are most likely also at least slightly leaning towards the HSP trait, okay? Because HSP people find each other and they really like to spend time with one another, okay? So my best friends, they are all very sensitive people, and research shows that actually 20% of the world population is highly sensitive. So chances are that you are an HSP as well. Now, one of the main researchers on this topic is Elaine Aron, and she actually wrote multiple books about the highly sensitive person, and I read a few of her books, and I wanted to share the things that I've learned by reading her books with you in this video. So an HSP, or highly sensitive person, is a specific type of person who engages in deeper processing, okay? The highly sensitive approach to things is an innate survival strategy that has been found in over 100 different animal species around the globe. There's also animals who display certain qualities that characterize a highly sensitive individual. So it's not only human beings, the traits are also found in the animal kingdom. Now, highly sensitive people, they process everything carefully before they act, okay? You might be watching and observing and reflecting before you make a decision. You like to process things very deeply and carefully. And so the acronym that describes the trait is D.O.E.S. D.O.E.S characterizes the highly sensitive person, and D stands for depth of processing, okay? You probably experienced yourself that you process things way more deeply. You pay attention to stuff, you think things through, you weigh the pros and the cons, okay? You don't necessarily brush over things without taking every little detail into consideration, okay? Depth of processing. You pay attention to the details. Now, that depth of processing can cause the highly sensitive person to be overstimulated, okay? And that is usually the thing that most people notice about highly sensitive people, okay? You might feel overwhelmed, you might feel the need for downtime, you might feel the need to withdraw because you feel overstimulated, and that is the O in the D.O.E.S acronym, okay? Depth of processing can lead to overstimulation. So there's a high need for you to actually reduce the stimulation and to get back to your center. That is absolutely what happened with me. Every time I feel overstimulated, I need some time alone to recharge my batteries, to reduce the level of stimulation so I can feel in control again, because when I'm overstimulated, I can't function properly. So because of the depth of processing, this is also more stressful for us. So that is why this leads to the overstimulation problem. Now, the E stands for, and you might have probably already guessed it, emotional responsiveness and empathy. Okay, we as highly sensitive people have an innate capacity relating to other people. You might even have found yourself in a situation where you felt the feelings of another person even before they became consciously aware of it themselves. Highly sensitive people have this innate skill set, this innate capacity to feel others deeply, okay, to relate emotionally very, very deeply, and so there is a lot of emotional responsiveness and a high level of empathy. Now, this also makes us think more about what we did well or where we did poorly, okay? HSP people tend to really overthink stuff, and we are usually a little bit more sensitive to our negative or poor performances than we are to our good performances. So we pay a lot of attention to negative stimuli, and we are very aware when we act poorly. So this might make us more vulnerable to developing depression or anxiety disorders, and that is why it's so important as an HSP person to take really good care of your mental health. Now, the S stands for awareness of subtleties. You might have noticed that you're the type of person who really pays attention to the subtleties, the little details, okay? You see a little flower along the sidewalk, or you hear a bird singing, or you notice a reflection of the sun and it moves you, okay? You pay attention to the subtleties. Now, as an HSP, you have a very strong need for downtime. So it's really important that once you discover that you have this trait, that you take good care of your own emotional regulation, okay? You want to make sure that you take enough time to relax, to come to your senses, to reduce the level of overstimulation, because otherwise you will not be able to function properly. This is something that I struggled with so many times, okay? I felt like I wanted to be active in a social environment, but it was kind of like draining me in the end, so I needed some time off to recharge my batteries, because otherwise I would exhaust myself and I would feel completely lost and confused and anxious, and I didn't want to go out after that, okay? So a problem that a lot of you guys might run into is that, okay, you did a whole day of city tripping, but at the end of the night, you don't want to join the people to the club, for example. And they're like, why don't you want to join us to the club? But you are just exhausted because there was so much novel stimulation that you need time to process this, okay? So this is really important to understand about yourself so that you can give yourself the necessary self-care that you need in order for you to feel comfortable and to thrive in today's society. Because if you don't pay attention to your downtime, you will suffer for it. That's exactly what I did, and it caused me tremendous pain in my life. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is that high sensitivity is often confused with introversion and shyness. But this is not at all the case, because as it turns out, 30% of highly sensitive people are actually extroverts, okay? And this was very new information for me, because I felt like, but I'm not really an introvert. It sounds like HSP people are introverted people, but I'm very extroverted. I like to be social with people. I just need a lot of downtime, and I feel like I process things so much more deeply. So actually 30% of HSP people are extroverted, okay? They're novelty-seeking people. They want exciting experiences in their life, and I'm exactly this type of person. And it was an eye-opening experience for me to learn about that. I am a highly sensitive person who is an extrovert, and these people exist, okay? It's a set of people who actually are similar to me. I love novel experiences. That's why I went traveling. That's why I love to meet new people. But I was confused about the fact that I need so much downtime. I feel like I process things so deeply, and it makes me feel a little bit like an outsider, okay? Because most extroverted people, they love to spend a lot of time with people, and they recharge their batteries as they're hanging out with people. They don't necessarily need that much downtime. So it made me feel a little bit weird about myself. So this is just like an introduction to the HSP material that I want to present here on the channel more often, because I feel like it's absolutely something that needs to be talked about more, and there's also not a lot of men talking about this topic. So I would like to be a person that shares this information with you so you can feel less alone with whatever you're dealing with in your life. Okay, so I want to mention a few of the resources that I used for this video. The first book that I read is The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron. She also has a workbook that I highly recommend you check it out. I actually ordered her Audible program, so it's a series of lectures where she teaches about HSP. She is a fantastic person, and I feel like if you are an HSP and you read her book, you will have a very emotional experience reading that book. I cried many times throughout the book because I finally felt seen and understood by someone who has put 30 years of her life into researching this trait. So maybe you can also take an HSP test if you're interested. I'll put the link in the description. You can go take that test and see whether you are actually an HSP or not. But since you resonated with the points that I touched on in the beginning of this video, chances are very high that you are a highly sensitive person, and it might change your life discovering this, okay? So maybe you can find a community near you that supports HSP people. There's a lot of resources online, and so you gotta start somewhere, and I wanted to introduce you to this trait because I am personally an HSP person with extraversion, and it took me a long time to discover this about myself, and it really changed the way I view myself and the way I relate with people. So there's a lot more HSP content to come here on the channel, so stay tuned for that. If you feel like this is something that you're interested in, you can scroll down right now and click on the subscribe and the post notification button. I want to release more content about this topic regularly because I think that it's a really important thing to talk about, and I hope that by doing this I can allow you to accept yourself just a little bit more, okay? I want to thank you all so much for your attention, and as always, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video.